Hello and welcome to a different video. We are on Project Cars and we are going to be driving around the road America with the Lotus 49 Cosworth. Probably one of the most difficult cars on Project Cars to actually drive. Obviously it goes an insane amount of speed, but is running on 60s technology, so 60s brakes, 60s tyres, so it's going to be very hard to control this car. We're going to see what kind of lap times we can do with this Lotus 49, and then we are going to use more modern Formula 1 cars and see how good we do and the progression of speed, because obviously you go into the 70s and 80s, downforce started becoming a thing with aero parts and stuff like this. This is all pure mechanical grip. Now I'm coming out of the pits now and we're going to try and take it nice and easy through the first lap or so, because obviously I've actually had no practice with this car. I've just jumped straight into Project Cars and messed around with the game, gone on to Road America, which is a circuit I know sort of, but I don't know too well, and I picked this circuit because there are quite a lot of high speed corners, but there also are some low speed corners and there's elevation changes, so it will test out this car's handling. And as you can see, coming into the second corner, I realised with the cold tyres, locking up is a big issue, because well, the brakes are terrible. I think they're drum brakes from the 60s. They are not exactly brilliant, and these tyres as well, there is a myth with tyres from the 60s on Grand Prix cars, is that they were used for more than one Grand Prix. They were that hard that you could use them for more than one Grand Prix, which is absolutely amazing. As you can see, I'm taking it very easily through the first few corners, having a couple of lag spikes, but nothing too serious. This game does push my hardware to the limit. So we are now starting to run for the first flying lap, and as you can see, we totally mess it up. We come into the braking zone, get a little bit squirrely, lock up and then go wide. This car was very hard to judge where the braking zone should be and what kind of cornering speeds that this car can do. Obviously not that great. As you can see, 2 corners in a row going wide. And I must say sorry actually, because this isn't a flying lap, this is still our warm-up lap. You can see the tyres are now starting to warm up. It's only taking around about a lap to warm up these tyres, so we're going to be starting our flying lap now. We're going to come over the ridge, which I was very scared to do. I lifted off, but that wasn't enough, as we slightly hit the barrier there. Coming over the hill, obviously with no downforce, the car jumped up in the air. I think the front end lifted, and then the rear tyres just spun out slightly, and that's when we went into the grass and slightly nudging the barrier. So we're braking around about 200 metres before the corner, and still not enough with this Lotus 49. So yeah, this car was very difficult to try, and it was a very weird car with the handling characteristics, because obviously you've got a insane amount of power. I think around about 400 horsepower going into the rear tyres, but the technology back then couldn't handle the speed, so you're really on the limit, just turning slightly, going through these fast sections, because the front end weighed more than the rear end. The rear end just liked to scribble around. As you can see there, I'm just coming over a ridge, trying to turn slightly, and the rear end just wants to get away from us. So yeah, I was struggling quite a lot with this car, but we do start to get grips with it, and we start understanding how it handles and how we can stop the understeer and where the braking zones are. That was the main thing, and knowing how much we could actually push this car, because you cannot simply go flat out with this car around this track. In some places you've got to have a serious lift off, like here coming into this braking zone. Yeah, it just wasn't at all good, and in the end we decided to do a few donuts, and we in the end set a 2 minutes 38.712 with this car. So yeah, I think I could have probably pushed out an extra 5 seconds, but it was going to take so long to get used to this car that we just thought this is the best lap that we're going to do, unless we want to spend an hour and a half practicing. So next we move to the 1986 Lotus. Now this has got a insane amount of downforce. It's got turbo. It's very fast at getting up to speed. I think it tops out around about 190 miles an hour, something like that. Now, I was really nervous with this car because knowing about the turbo and things like that, it was going to make things a little bit difficult. But I needn't have worried because I was using this car and it was so nice to drive, especially I think it was coming from the Lotus 49 and then jumping straight into this car, which is 20 years later, 20 years better technology. It just felt so much nicer to drive, and it could take insane amounts of corner speed. Even from a car from the 1980s, it was absolutely amazing to drive. You can see the acceleration is absolutely brilliant, and we're still on cold tyres, and I've got the confidence with this car. I can push it. I can, even on an outlap, I'm starting to push it and realising actually I can push it a little bit more because I'm braking where I think I should brake, just being a little bit cautious because I don't want to spin off or things like that. But there was just an insane amount of braking power and grip that this car could turn through the corners, and even when you got a little bit of a twitch on, it was easy to handle. You could gather up the car and you could stop it from spinning out quite easily as we sort of hit a bollard there. For some reason the game just does decide to have a little bit of a lag spike every now and again. I don't know why it is, and you can see the difference through this corner is absolutely amazing. Now we're coming on to the straight. Now at this point I didn't realise you could go flat out through there, but you can with this car. You can go flat out into the next corner. So we are now going to start our first flying lap with this Lotus F1 car from 1986. And we are just hitting an insane amount of speed. You can see the tyres are warmed up now, so we can really start pushing this car to its potential. And that was a 1:54.3. I thought that was an outlap still, but it was actually a lap, so 1:54. So we've picked up around about 40 seconds already, having a little bit of a drift going into the first corner. It can be quite twitchy, but it's just so easy to handle that you can gather it up, even running wide into this corner, going over the rumble strips. There was no problems at all. You could easily hold this car around, even in a four-wheel drift. You can just gather it up. It was so nice to drive. We come across the line again and we set a 1:51.3. So we gained around about 4 seconds in that lap. And then we go for another drift. That is quite common in this car, as we just drift all over the place, getting onto the power a little bit too soon. But even when you did that, you could gather it back up, as I said many times beforehand. It was such a nice car to drive. It did have its moments. It wasn't all plain sailing. It did have some really tough moments to gather it up. I mean, if you got a corner wrong, yeah, you could either fix it or it would go terribly wrong. And as you can see, they're drifting through that corner there, and it was just, it never wanted to spin out on you. You always felt like there was still more grip for the car to be given. However, I was just starting to try and push it too much, and it was too much to ask for this car. So we now move on to a modern Formula 1 car, Formula A it's called, on Project Cars. I believe this is based on a 2012 or 2013 spec Formula 1 car, 7 gears. It's got KERS and DRS, but we will not be using those because we just want to see the raw speed, not with the technology, the kinetic energy and the DRS, which I've never really liked anyway. So I did find out immediately with this car that I didn't like it as much as I liked that 1986 Formula 1 car. This felt a lot more twitchy, and as you can see, the brakes don't feel as good. I don't know if this car is heavier or we just going simply higher speeds, but the brakes just simply didn't feel right. They just, you could lock up very, very easily. But even when you didn't lock up, the just braking distances didn't feel right. They just felt longer than they should do as we come into this corner, running extremely wide. And that was probably about the same point I was braking with the 1986 Grand Prix car, and then we get on the power too soon and we send the car into a spin. So yeah, this car did take quite a lot of getting used to. I mean, I do actually prefer the 1986 Grand Prix car, but this obviously is going to be a little bit faster. How much faster? That is the question, because we had that massive jump from the 60s to the 80s. You had that massive jump of 40 odd seconds, and with this car it just didn't feel much better. I mean, through here, yeah, I could see that there was a lot more downforce and a lot more grip going through these long right hand corners, but yeah, it just didn't feel that much of a leap between this car and the 1986 Grand Prix car, because some things actually felt worse. I mean, the acceleration is better, braking felt worse, the grip felt a little bit better, but not too much. So yeah, this car did take quite a lot of getting used to, but we finally start getting used to the car and just knowing where the braking distances are, braking around about 150 metres before this corner, and that seemed to work just about right. Now we come over the ridge, slowly ease off the power, just nudge on the brakes, probably could have broke a little bit more, missed the apex, but we haven't lost too much time. Now this corner you can go flat out, which is quite good, and then this braking zone here, braking around about this point here, and that is just about right, probably could have pushed it a little bit more. Now this is the corner where I think the modern Formula 1 car gains all of its time. It's doing 150 miles an hour through that corner, where the Lotus 49 was doing about 70, and I believe the 1986 Grand Prix car was doing around about 110. So it gained a lot of time through this corner, and you could go quite late onto the brakes here because of the immense amount of grip that you had with the Grand Prix cars. So yeah, it just took a lot of getting used to, because I know a few people that play Project Cars saying they don't like the handling of the Formula A cars on this game, because they can either be very, very twitchy, very oversteery, or they can have immense amounts of understeer. So we come across the line and we set a 1:44.2, so it's around about 6-7 seconds that we've gained, run wide into the first corner. And yeah, only a 6-second advantage between us going through 20-30 years of Formula 1. Now we had to spin through this lap, and then we just try and push the car as much as possible, lock up, and we go straight into the barrier. So that was the end of that. So guys, if you would like to see more Project Car videos, tell me in the comments down below and like this video, because if we get a lot of likes on this video, then I will definitely do some more Project Cars videos, maybe a career mode on it, I'm not too sure yet. But tell me in the comments down below if you'd like to see more random videos on Project Cars. This has been Splash. Do not forget to like, comment and subscribe, and as always guys, I will see you in the next video.